I have been photographing since middle school. Can 1 year really make a difference in my photography skill? Hi, my name is Ben. Welcome back to my channel, Go to Zero. So I have done a lot of different kinds of photography over the years. Now, just to kind of give you an idea, some of the things I've done, I've had a chance to do some award-winning wildlife shots. I did paid portraiture for groups as well as individual clients, actually videography too in that space. I've done some astrophotography over the years. I've done landscape, I've done travel, so many different things. It's a ton of fun, all the different things that I've gotten a chance to do in photography, and I want to share a bit of that with you on the channel here. All right, so one thing I want to be really straightforward about is there's a lot of photography courses out there. I've been kind of even looking at some courses as I was putting this series together and thinking about what I wanted to do, but I want to be very clear. I am not selling a course. I don't have one and I don't plan on selling a course. This is just my journey. So that's kind of the fun of it, because I invite you to follow along. If you want to try these challenges out, please do. Let me know how it goes in the comments. I want to hear, I want to see what people do with this, because this is going to be a lot more advanced approach in that I'm going to be using some concepts out of like college classes and even some graduate level classes that influence how I approach photography, and hopefully kind of really challenge me, push myself through this process. And if you follow along, I think you're gonna have a blast. All right, so I'm hyping it up so much. What the heck am I doing? Well, for 1 year, I am going to be doing a series of videos. I'm gonna try it, I don't know what frequency. So we're gonna do a series of videos, basically diving into different photography concepts, kind of treating it like a workshop where I'm gonna be going through and I'm gonna bring you along on the shooting. I'm going to explain the gear. I'm even going to bring you along on the editing. And my goal is in this year to produce a small portfolio in order to submit to a local gallery. Quick thing before we get into this, I want to talk about ads. I generally turn off customized ads. I don't really have any sponsors for this, so no camera sponsors, anything like that. The only company I'm going to mention is Camuso, and that's because I'm still using them, honestly. I think they're great. There's a coupon code below, so don't forget to check them out. Hey, quick note on cameras though. As far as cameras go, I have shot with Nikon, I have shot with Sony, I have shot with Canon, and a whole lot of others. I don't really care. I'm not particularly picky. I happen to be on the Sony platform right now. That's just what's working for me, and I'm sticking with it for the moment. But do you need advanced cameras to get into this? No. You could do this with a phone. I would recommend an editor, something like DaVinci Resolve, or if you want to get into Lightroom, that's going to be important throughout, because we are going to be editing these photos as part of our goal to create a portfolio that is actually worth submitting to a local gallery. All right, so hopefully you're as excited as I am to get into this challenge, get out there taking photos. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe down below so you will catch the next one as we go through the series. And with that said, let's get into our first challenge right now. All right, so we're talking photography today. I got to go back to basics. Last weekend I went out shooting and it was a miserable mess. I lost more than half the photos. Nothing came out the way I wanted it to. So back to basics. We're going to be talking about f-stop, we're going to be talking about shutter speed, and we're going to be talking about ISO today, exposure triangle. I know this is some really basic stuff. So the first thing I want to say when we're getting into this is that if you are using a smartphone, you can still participate in this. Smartphones actually do have these settings a lot of times. There's some different apps out there. If you know a really good app for converting smartphones and allowing to do these adjustments, please throw it down below. If there's a smartphone you use that has that built in, let us know about that too. That would be really useful. All right, so I'm going to try and explain these concepts as simply as possible really quick today, because we're at Tanger, it's early, and I want to take advantage of the light. But the three aspects of the exposure triangle have to do with ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. ISO is pretty straightforward. That's the ISO number on the back. It usually runs somewhere between 64 and 10,000. There are extended ISOs that go up to 100,000. We're not going to talk about those because they introduce way too much noise. I don't shoot on a full frame sensor to get a lot of noise, so we're mostly going to be sticking to base ISO or getting as close as possible. I picked a bright sunny day for that. Now, ISO is the first thing you can move up or down to introduce more or less light into the photo. The other two ways you can do that are shutter speed and aperture. So aperture is simply how big that little opening in the back of the lens is, how much light is let onto the sensor at a time. So think smaller number, bigger opening, bigger number, smaller opening. So with this lens being an f2.8, 2.8 is the widest it's going to get, and it can close down to about f22. The last thing is shutter speed. That's the amount of time the shutter stays open. That's the amount of light that gets to the sensor for an individual photo. Now, shutter speed, this is a tricky one, and this is probably the place I screwed up the most, because I was shooting a lot of macro and things like that, and I was either shooting too low, I'd get some blur, or I was shooting too high and I'd get really dark photos. Or the other thing with that is I'd be just all over the place with the mix. So today we're going to be using a couple of different settings. All right, well, I found something right away. So what's really catching my eye, and I mean, obviously it's on the path, so I don't want to set up a tripod or anything like that, but you got this tiny little one just in the light there, and it's illuminating the leaf underneath it, which I think gives a really cool composition. I don't know why I started taking my backpack off. I guess I'm going to take it the whole way off. Be a bit of a pain here. All right, so I have to be really careful because the light's coming from overhead and I don't want to mess the light up as I'm getting the shot. And then lastly, I gotta use this lens's macro mode. And I'm gonna be shooting fully manual here. Now this is a 100mm lens, and one of the easy ways to go with the reciprocal rule here for stabilization, it is a stabilized lens and it's a stabilized body, so I probably don't need that, but I'm going to do about 100, which makes a lot of sense to me. Just making sure all my settings are actually on, sometimes we mess that up. Oh, and I think I have the... Yeah, I have the manual aperture on. Okay. Cool. All right, so I love the texture of these leaves, and I love the little colors around the edges, but I need to find one that's just perfect. This has a little bloom coming out, which I think is a little nicer effect. Gives a little bit of a 3D effect, but I have to turn a little bit because otherwise it's going to be overexposed. In this case, I'm going to push all the way to the edge of that STF lens. All right, today I actually chose to shoot with two lenses. Last time I chose only one. So one of the lenses is the 100mm and the other is the 90. So both f2.8 lenses. The thing about this one though, is this is not the 100mm macro. I am looking at possibly trying that out in the future, but this is the 100mm STF lens from Sony. It is a G Master lens. It's very sharp, but it's also very nitpicky. I originally picked this up on the recommendation of Tony and Chelsea Northrup because Chelsea did this review on it that was absolutely fantastic, and it is a quirky lens. It's designed for some very specific things, and the reason I like this lens is because it creates a really strange background effect that looks really nice in photos, and also honestly it's really well stabilized and it's a good all-around lens. Ooh, a little mess in there. Okay. And so the other lens I brought was the 90mm f2.8 by Sony. Now this is an honestly underappreciated lens. So if you're on the Sony platform and you want one of the sharpest macro lenses ever made for under $1,000, this is the lens. this 90mm, and I can say this having used a lot of different lenses, including the Tamron 90 when I was on the Nikon platform, that this 90 is unbelievably sharp, and DxOMark has the stats to back that up. Now, I don't know about the new 100 from Sony. It's actually on my wish list, so maybe we'll get to try that out at some point. But this is amazing because it has full-time manual override just by slipping this little ring here forward. And it allows you to do this zoom in close with any of the new Sony models, so you can get just perfect manual focus done on it. It also still has stabilizations, OSS, it's an older version of it, but combined with an IBIS camera, you're gonna have a ton of stabilization on here. It's a very small, compact lens, and I love it. I've been using this for a long time, highly recommend it. One other small thing I want to note, especially for people trying to start out on the Sony system, one thing that I did is I actually got this and the Sigma. I believe it was the 70mm, and the Sigma is nowhere close. One of the main reasons I say that, the Sigma can be useful in certain situations, but it's not a closed system and it doesn't have weatherproofing. Now, the Sigma 105 is a different discussion. That is an excellent macro lens in and of itself. But just be careful, because a lot of times you're going to get into macro and you're going to think that you're going to be able to do things in controlled space, but actually there's going to be water splashing everywhere or some other kind of thing going on where you're going to wish you had that weather sealing. So just my suggestion, get one that does have that to start. Alright, and I'm actually trying this one at different apertures, so starting, and I'm actually going to do that really close-up mode, gives it a little faster focus in this space. But I started with f8, and then I went down to f5.6. I'm also going to try the shot at f4, and then I'm going to go all the way to wide open at f2.8 just to see, can this shot work in that. This one is so interesting because it's isolated, it's lit separately. The question is just how to work it exactly. It's got such an interesting composition to it though. That'll do. Very interesting shot, very interesting composition. I always try to look for those little things. Now, I want to mention, since I've been talking about aperture, f-stop, ISO, all these kinds of things. So today what I did to give myself a little bit of a safety, especially with ISO when I'm shooting a lot of wildly varied scenes or things like that, is I've got auto ISO with a limiter on it. Now, it's got the limiter because if I push past the limiter, because this is an electronic viewfinder, I'll be able to see that it's darkening the image or lightening the image, and that'll help me keep everything in range. But I limited to, I want to say ISO 6400. I don't see any reason we would be hitting that today, but just to be on the safe side. So that's ISO. You can do it manually if you really want to and learn more about ISO. There's a lot of great videos out there on that, but this is just kind of the basics of keeping ISO under control. So this is such an interesting one because you want to capture the pattern, but f-stop, you know, the whole thing about f-stop is it's going to control the depth of field. And depth of field will, yeah, you can expand it, but once you really get past f12, especially in the macro world, you're going to start losing sharpness due to diffraction. And a lot of times in these situations, I think the more artistic thing is actually figuring out what slice to take out of it, as opposed to just trying to capture absolutely everything, right? Capturing absolutely everything is more of documenting. That's not necessarily the art of photography. Let's see. So I'm going to take it all the way wide open for a second to see how those look. See what I can do. F5.6 looks a little bit better. F8 kind of looks the realm I want, but I wonder if I can get something that isolates more shapes and the essence of these as opposed to just the repetition. Ooh, okay. I think I've got the idea here. I'm going to back it up a little bit to add a little splash of color in there. I think I like that composition. So one other fun thing, I just saw this little edge of these leaves and I'm like, I love the texture that's happening around these. I want to see if we can do something with that. Very interesting. Alright, so this one's an interesting example because you can't always get your eye to the viewfinder. This is one of the nice places I like having that adjustable viewfinder. It's got really cool background colors like purple and things like that, so I need to balance the composition a little bit. And I'm going to pull it back a little bit because I think I might need to crop or adjust this in post. Okay, so this is a little different, but I do love doing kind of old buildings and things like that. I love the little details. So this might be a place where I sneak back out the 100mm, because these kinds of details, rust and things like that, although the 90 can do great really up close, I actually think the 100's a little superior. I'll be honest, when I came to a garden today, I didn't think I was going to be talking about ways that I deal with older buildings. Now, one thing I will warn about older buildings immediately, because it's catching my eye here, right? Wasp nest, lots of webs. But webs can kind of be cool in their own right if you look around and look for different angles. Maybe you get a really good web, or maybe you get a really nice spider in the middle of their web, because spiders like to hide. It's hard to get them to show off. Or you get an opportunity like this, which might just be a simple shot. I'm actually, I'm gonna keep it wide open. So it's on aperture priority. And what we wanna do is I wanna use this contrast here. This is gonna be really tricky because I'll actually have to pull it out in post. And the more I'm looking at it, the more it's gotta break some rules here to make this shot work. I also cheated a little bit there. I actually used back button focus and I locked my focus, and then I moved forward until the focus was actually where I wanted it in the shot, because it was having a little trouble grabbing onto something. Yeah, I could use a single point and just pick that spot, or manual the whole way, but sometimes that little lean is enough, especially if you take a couple of shots. So I'm just wandering through it a little bit more. Obviously there's not a ton of machinery, but there's some. And like chains like this always create a cool repeating pattern if you can get them right. All right, this is an interesting spot because there's koi in the pond, there's water moving. They're almost in the same, yep, they're in the same focal plane more or less. I don't really need the water super sharp anyway, but I'm curious if this is better done with a tripod. So I'm gonna try the tripod. The other thing I'm gonna play around with is a preview of things to come, but we're gonna try a few different angles and try to get a few different things together. All right, so vertical is gonna make this work okay, but now we're actually gonna switch off to shutter priority because I want this shot to go really, really slow. Take a long time. So what I'm gonna do here, and I'm watching out for this, is on the back screen, as you go down, a lot of times, a lot of displays only show auto ISO. They don't actually tell you what ISO you're at. And that can be a little scary. So to avoid overexposing, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep going up in time, but as soon as I notice the scene got a little bit lighter there, and it stayed the same for a lot of times prior to that, that tells me I'm reaching the limit of the lowest ISO, and I probably need to go up even in my aperture. So I can cheat a little bit more. I can take it up to f8. Again, because this is an STF lens, I can take this a little bit further than I might otherwise be able to. This should be completely manual, but okay, here we are. In fact, I think we're gonna have to do something a little unusual. We're gonna have to pick a lower ISO. And I'm gonna manually go down to ISO 50. I haven't had to do that in a long time. Because this one is actually adjusting the aperture. Even though I have it set on manual aperture, I didn't realize it was gonna override that, so important to know. All right, I think we're actually ready to get the shot. So what I'm gonna do, just to get the most out of this, is I'm going to set a delay. And I don't think we need to bracket it because we don't have too much in that space, so I'll just let it do a single shot. And then I'm going to be hands off of it so it can do the actual shot. All right, now before I stop here, because this is a very complex shot, I want to see how that actually came out. That's interesting. It kind of smoothed out the water. I'm going to see if we do a little bit faster. So we're going to go down to 1/4 of a second just to see how those play. Same idea. Okay, let's see how that turned out. That's better. Okay. See, I like how that's shooting because now I'm actually getting the koi. The other one I think was a little too slow for the koi. That's 1/4 second exposure. I'm also going to push it to 1/3. And then I'm going to do that again at 1/5. Now it's all the way down to f8, which is kind of cool. All right, and I changed the focus point again. Do 1/6. Well, let me take a look and see how these are turning out. Maybe they're where we need them to be. Well, can't pinch zoom. I always forget you can't pinch zoom on these. That's okay though. I think the 1/5 is the best in that space. I like how that came out. Interesting. Okay. So what I'm finding here for the koi is that in order to get that, I'm actually gonna have to take it off the tripod and try that a little different. So here we go. So back on. Silly me, forgot to change my shooting mode. We're gonna be on high plus now, but we're gonna be shooting a lot faster. We're gonna be shooting shutter priority. So we're gonna say 1/400, let's see. One 400 might have been a little too fast, maybe 1/250th. Let's see. I want to see how those turned out. It's got a good look to it. Oh. There we go. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, that's the fast shooting. Now I don't need to keep it on that mode by any stretch. I'll go back to mid on this one. I generally shoot mid because the high plus is 10 frames a second. That's a little fast for what we're doing here. I want to get that like so perfect here. This one. All right, so we're back to doing full manual mode and ISO 50 because I want to force this down a lot. There we go. Okay, we're gonna try half a second, 5 image continuous.
Do you post any
together, so it's not just gonna be one shot at the end, but I love how that looks. Just that lower shutter speed. So one thing that just caught my eye here, actually, problem with the Sony sometimes is it has this exposure meter that you can bump, and it looked like it was actually set over, so way faster than I wanted it to be at. That's weird. Let me see here. All right, so with this one, this is going to be a bit tricky because even though it's held in place, we're going to have to shoot continuous, and we're going to need quite a few shots here. Like 5 images at least. Probably sets of images, honestly. All right, so it's 1/25. That's really, really fast. That's what I'm trying to do, but we'll see. We can try to average them, but we're gonna need at least 25 to average. 4 and 5. All right. I'm curious how that's gonna turn out. I really don't know. Look at the images and they've got some interesting sheen to them, some shine in a way that I haven't seen before. And I think the STF lens here gives me a little bit of an advantage with the ND filter built into it because it is doing a little cutting. It's acting like a CPL, which is kind of strange. Really good visibility on the rocks here though. This is just a fun place. All right, so we're wrapping up here. A lot of close-up, a lot of kind of macro shooting and macro-esque shooting here at Tanger, which is fine. It's a good place to practice, and it's a place I'm always comfortable. I love shooting things in that small world. It's a ton of fun. And we learned about ISO, we talked about aperture, we talked about shutter speed, we talked about different ways to kind of cheat the system to get a little bit more out of these things. But don't ever underestimate these. Even if you've been doing it for years and years and years, you can still benefit from coming back to those kind of basic explorations sometimes. I know for years I found myself stuck in habits, and I come back and I decide, oh, well, maybe if I question why I'm doing that and I start using more aperture, or I start maybe playing with ISO a little bit more, or especially shutter speed. If you aren't playing with shutter speed, that's a very important thing to be messing around with. But these basics form the foundation of all photography learning, truly. This is the basics of how to control light. Now we're going to be doing a whole lot more videos on this. I'm going to be talking about analog cameras. We're going to be doing travel photography. We're going to be going all over the place. A lot of different fun experiments. So if you want to catch those, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Throw a comment down below if there's anything that you found useful here, or things you want to add in. That's helpful to me as well as I grow in this journey. And other than that, just take care until the next one, okay?